Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am guest hosting for the day. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. I do live in northern Florida, where you are actually, according to the left, you're going to find more racism, bigotry, microaggressions, hatred, and patriarchy. But one of the things I've noticed about living here is that it's actually one of the most diverse places in the world, which sort of leads me to believe that a lot of the leftist tropes about places like Jacksonville, which is where I'm at right now. Come and find me, I dare you. Places like Jacksonville are often seen to be, Confederate home to the Confederacy. Jackson, he owns slaves. Jacksonville. I mean, it's complete and utter hogwash. You know, it's one of these places where it's totally diverse. There's people of all stripes living in harmony. There's no white privilege. When I go to the store, it's not like I get to cut the black people in line. I don't get to cut the black people. I don't get to cut the women in line. There's no institutional sexism or racism or homophobia. So this business from the left is really getting tiring. However, it has come to pass that in Hollywood, we have been confronted with something that is a little bit more insidious, I would say. Harvey Weinstein, the producer of Pulp Fiction, the big-time Hollywood producer. According to leftist media, there's allegations, sexual harassment allegations. I mean, there's audio of the guy doing it. There's audio of the guy committing sexual harassment. But no, they're just allegations. And finally, all these big Hollywood women like Glenn Close, Meryl Streep, Ashley Judd, they're all coming out and condemning Harvey Weinstein. But apparently this has been going on for years. This has been going on for decades even. And no one has come out about the rumors. There were rumors. You see, they were only rumors up until now. But now, folks like Ashley Judd is now she's finally developed a conscience. She's finally able to, now that another woman, many other women have come out basically admitting that Harvey Weinstein sexually harassed them. Now people like Ashley Judd are coming out because they're trying to get ahead of the game. Ashley Judd is saying, yes, I was also sexually harassed by Harvey Weinstein. I thought you were a nasty woman, Ashley Judd. I thought you were super into your feminism. Why haven't you come out before? Wouldn't that be something that you think that your feminist friends would want to know about? Or is it possible that perhaps, maybe, your entire movie career happened because you allowed some sort of sexual harassment business to happen and you didn't say a word about it? Ashley Judd, you didn't say a word about it, not word one about sexual harassment from Harvey Weinstein. Why? Could it be because he's good friends with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and he's one of the Hollywood elites? He's one of these powerful men that can get you a role or keep you from getting a role in a movie? But I thought you were a powerful woman, Ashley Judd. I thought you were a nasty woman, a feminist. I thought you stood up for women's rights. Not when it's a leftist, though. Not when it's a leftist that's going around Hollywood with his creepy claws and his tentacles coming out and touching himself, cornering women into restaurants, into the back of a restaurant and pleasuring himself right in front of them. Oh, but it's just a rumor. It's just a rumor. You didn't experience that personally until everyone came out. Then you did experience it personally. Now you can come. Now it's safe. I thought you were a nasty, powerful woman, Ashley Judd. I thought that you would be the intrepid, you would be the first one. You would be the first one to come out and say, you know what, there is institutional sexual harassment in Hollywood. You have your casting couches where creeps like Harvey Weinstein say, oh, don't you know who I am? I'm a powerful guy. I'm famous. Just take your clothes off. Hang on, let me just touch myself. Just sit on that casting couch right there. Oh, but no, I kind of don't want to. I don't want to do this. Oh, come on, just sit over there. I'm super duper famous. And trust me, you want to be friends with me. You don't want to disrespect me because trust me, I can do things for you. I could, but Harvey, I don't want to, Mr. Weinstein. This doesn't feel comfortable. I don't really like this. Just hold on a second. Let me just take out my junk. Start touching it. Start massaging it. Okay. All right. Oh, but God, this is really, really weird for me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. This is gross. You're a fat, terrible, awful, disgusting person. But you know what? I'm just going to be quiet. Because my name is Ashley Judd. And I need jobs. I need a job in Hollywood. I care about my job more than I care about these causes that I promote and support on the weekends. When I put on my puss hat, that's just so I can be a moral preener, so I can posture, so I can peacock about what a good person I am and what a champion I am for women's rights. And Harvey Weinstein's there in the corner. Gross. So gross. I mean, it's disgusting what this guy has done, but what's even more disgusting is this culture of silence in Hollywood. But they're not so silent when there's a rumor about a conservative. When there's a rumor about a conservative, no, he may as well have done it. It's not an allegation, it's a fact of reality. It's assumed that the guy is guilty. But no, if it's Harvey Weinstein, the big mogul who produced Pulp Fiction and Clerks and a whole bunch of other big-time Hollywood movies, the guy won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. But no, they were just rumors. These big Hollywood actresses like Ashley Judd and Glenn Close and Meryl Streep, who have been extremely vocal about their feminist views, once this came out, they had to come out. They had to say something. And big Hollywood actresses like Glenn Close and Meryl Streep have come out. Oh, they're just so terrified, and it's just such a disgrace. Meryl Streep said, "The disgraceful news about Harvey Weinstein has appalled those of us whose work he championed and those whose good and worthy causes he supported. The intrepid women who raised their voices to expose this abuse are our heroes. One thing can be clarified. Not everybody knew. Harvey supported the work fiercely, but was exasperating, but respectful with me in our working relationship and many others with whom he worked professionally. I didn't know about the other offenses. I didn't know about his financial settlements with actresses and colleagues. I did not know about his having meetings in his hotel room, his bathroom, and in other inappropriate, coercive acts. I call bull, Meryl Streep. I think you are just coming out because now there's proof of this culture of secrecy in Hollywood, of which you've been a part."
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful four-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville. can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanYourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. It's a beautiful Friday. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, sexism in Hollywood, and patriarchy. Yes, I did just say sexism in Hollywood. In liberal, leftist Hollywood. I was just reading just a moment ago a statement by Meryl Streep where she basically denies knowing anything about Harvey Weinstein's nasty, disgusting escapades where he would go and take new actresses, people who wanted roles and jobs in Hollywood. He would take them in the back room and corner them. He's this big, nasty, brutish, disgusting looking villain-esque type of guy, and he would take them and he would corner them in a room and start playing with himself and touching himself and jerking them a gherkin right in front of them, right in the middle of dinner. Except folks like Meryl Streep, these hypocrites, these Hollywood hypocrites who claim not to know anything about this. She says, I did not know about these other offenses. I did not know about his financial settlements with actresses and colleagues. I did not know about him having meetings in his hotel room, his bathroom, or other inappropriate coercive acts. And she says, and if everybody knew, I don't believe that all the investigative reporters in the entertainment and the hard news media would have neglected for decades to write about it. Really, Meryl Streep? Do you really believe that? To me, this looks like you're just trying to come out ahead of this, because there's no way that you didn't know about it. And if these rumors were so strong, like you said, oh, I've heard about these rumors for years. But, there was no proof. If you knew that these rumors were so strong, if you knew that this might be going on, how can you really call yourself a champion of feminists and women's rights? How can you really call yourself a champion? She says, this behavior is inexcusable, but the abuse of power is familiar. Each brave voice that is raised, heard, and credited by our watchdog media will ultimately change the game. Little, too late, if you ask me. This behavior is inexcusable, but the abuse of power is familiar. You see that little jab in there? That little jab about patriarchy? The abuse of power is familiar. We have a culture. The culture is, it's an overarching problem of our American patriarchal culture that is causing people like Harvey Weinstein to go masturbate in front of unknowing women who literally just want to have an interview with one of the great producers of our time, right? And he takes advantage of these women. And people like Meryl Streep and Ashley Judd, they knew about it. They knew about it. They heard the rumors, but you know what? The gravy train has been riding for so long for these people that they didn't want to come out and actually do a real investigation on this guy. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine if instead of donating to Hillary Clinton and leftist causes, left and right, that Harvey Weinstein had donated to Ted Cruz's campaign. I venture to say that he never would have gotten in Hollywood where he got in Hollywood by being a right-wing conservative. People like Clint Eastwood and Charlton Heston they're diamonds in the rough, I suppose you could say. Their greatness far outweighs and overshadows any sort of political issue that they might have. But you know what, hacks, people like Harvey Weinstein, they don't get where they get by being conservative, if you know what I mean. Which is ultimately one of the ironic parts about this, because this has been going on for so many years, and so many of these actresses knew about it. They had to have known about it. Glenn Close practically admitted that she knew about it. She says in her full statement to the New York Times, I'm sitting here deeply upset, acknowledging to myself that yes, For many years, I have been aware of the vague rumors that Harvey Weinstein had a pattern of behaving inappropriately around women. Harvey has always been decent to me, but now the rumors are being substantiated. I feel angry and darkly sad. I'm angry not just at him and the conspiracy of silence around his actions, but also that the casting couch phenomenon, so to speak, is still a reality in our business and in the world. The horrible pressure, the awful expectations put on a woman when power, egotistical, entitled bully expects sexual favors in return for a job. I agree with you, Glenn Close. I agree with you. But only in a culture of silence that you have been a part of and that you have propagated does this stuff even happen. I think it's a little bit rich that now that the rumors are substantiated, now you've decided to come out. Could it be because there's pictures all around the internet of you being super duper chummy with Harvey Weinstein? Could it be because you can't get away from the fact that you were probably so close to the center of the onion that you were complicit in the silence in Hollywood, that you are now complicit, and now you have to come out ahead of this so that you don't have to explain away why you were silent for so long, that you've been aware of the vague rumors about the patterns of Harvey Weinstein behaving inappropriately around women. Now, it's funny how colorful your language isn't. You say inappropriately. I say took off his pants and masturbated in front of a woman that he cornered into a room where he was this powerful, a place that he owned, a place that he was this powerful man where he could just kind of go around and call the shots and tell everybody what to do, that he basically turned a vestibule in the back of a restaurant into his own little casting couch. Of course, Glenn Close couldn't not make her statement about feminism. And this is just, this is just proof that feminists are right and that there is this systematic patriarchy where men are just going around trying to victimize women. She has to go and make her jab. She has to go and jab the patriarchy. She says further, ours is an industry in which very few actors are indispensable and women are cast in far fewer roles than men. So the stakes are higher for women to make them more vulnerable to the manipulations of a predator. I applaud the monumental courage of the women who have spoken up. I hope that their stories and the reportage that gave them their voices represent a tipping point, that more stories will be told and that change will follow. The changes must be both institutional and personal. Men and women in positions of power must create a work environment in which people whose jobs depend on them feel safe to report threatening and inappropriate behavior like that reported in the Times. No one should be coerced into trading personal dignity for professional success. I feel the time is long and tragically overdue for all of us in the industry, women and men, to unite calmly and dispassionately and create a new culture of respect, equality, empowerment where bullies and their enablers are no longer allowed to prosper. You see a lot of that I like. Yes, I like that. I would like that kind of stuff. I would like that kind of talk from more Democrats. But you are complicit in this. You have kept silent. You have maintained this. The wall of silence is not the cops. There's no big blue wall of silence. This is a leftist wall of silence. And only when there's indisputable proof do you try to come out ahead of this and pretend like you haven't been complicit in this the whole time. Stay tuned. We're going to listen to some harrowing audio of some of the victims of Harvey Weinstein. We'll be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I run interference for Kevin Jackson while he is out in the world triggering lefties, triggering liberals left and right with his blackness. The guy's black. Liberals absolutely hate black conservatives because the entire idea of a black conservative lays waste to the foundation of their belief system, which is that everyone is racist, which is that all conservatives are racist. So And, of course, black people can't be racist according to the leftist narrative. So when Kevin Jackson comes out as a conservative, it just makes their head spin 360 degrees like The Exorcist, and projectile vomit goes everywhere. It's a show. It's a certain kind of show. And we here at the Kevin Jackson show, we like to point that out, and we like to make hay out of that because it's hilarious, if you ask me. Now, one of the things that we were just talking about, the only thing that we've been talking about thus far, is this Harvey Weinstein conspiracy to keep his sexual misconduct silent in Hollywood. Now, we hear a little bit about reparations all the time because, we say because of the institutional racism that used to be back 150 years, 200 years ago here in America, that white people today should be paying for black people's rent, and we should be paying for their food and stuff like that. They call it reparations. We need to repair the injustices of the past. Now, I'm not sure this kind of logic applies when it turns around, when it's turned around on the liberals. Kevin Smith, a very, very famous director, said about Harvey Weinstein's behavior, he said, "Harvey Weinstein financed the first 14 years of my career. And now I know, while I was profiting, others were in terrible pain. It makes me feel ashamed. Perhaps, Kevin Smith, maybe you should open up a fund. You should open up a fund for all the ladies who were accosted by Harvey Weinstein. Since you profited while others were in terrible pain, perhaps you should open up a bank account for some of these women. Reparations. You need to repair their pain." Now, I would say that there's a better argument for Kevin Smith, a real live person in the modern day who profited from someone else's terrible pain. I would say there's more of a reason for him to open up a reparations account for some of these women, because these women are still going through this actual pain. It's something that's happened in the modern world. But no, what we really need to the reparations we need to focus on are white people who never owned slaves repairing black people who never were slaves. You see, this is where the leftist logic the leftist logic falls apart in every single way, shape, and form, no matter where it goes. I like hearing that these women finally, Glenn Close, Meryl Streep, Ashley Judd come out and they criticize a Democrat. They had decades to criticize this guy. They had decades to make hay out of some of the rumors that were going around about Harvey Weinstein and his his misconduct towards women, sexually harassing women, grabbing women's breasts. They had plenty of time to do this. And now that it's politically expedient, now that the evidence has come out, they all knew. But now that the evidence has come out, now that the rumors were basically proven to be true, now they want to come out and condemn the guy when they have profited for their whole entire careers because of this culture, this casting couch culture in Hollywood. Compliments of Democrats, compliments of liberals, compliments of leftists. Now, look, credit to where it's due. Credit to where it's due. At least they're coming out now. But I'm sorry, Glenn Close, I don't want to hear about this institutional sexism, because all this stuff that you're saying, the changes, Glenn Close says the changes must be both institutional and personal. Institutional and personal. She can't even come out and criticize an individual person who was individually accused, individually proven to have performed these terrible acts of sexual misconduct. She wants to turn it into this big, gargantuan institutional thing. Now, maybe it is, but you're alluding to something a little different than what you're actually saying. You're alluding to conservative patriarchy. You're alluding to the patriarchy that Republicans are out there propagating.
And he came up behind me and said, "I think you're in my seat." And I recognized him immediately. It was Harvey Weinstein. And he pulled a chair over next to me and was very polite, very, very warm, very conversational. We started talking. He asked me what I did. We started talking about news, started talking about politics. He was complimenting me and telling me how impressed he was with how much I knew. And we were talking about presidential history. We both loved presidential history.
Yeah, all
it was
small
this really
talk
warm,
so that he
great
could basically get in her pants.
He asked you to go on a tour of the restaurant with him? Is that what happened?
Yeah, we were all sitting around at the table, and he said, I'm one of the owners of this restaurant. Have you ever seen the downstairs? There's a whole downstairs, and there's I'll take you through the kitchen. I'll show you where everything is. Okay. I thought a restaurant kitchen, there'd be people cooking and moving and things happening. And as soon as we got downstairs, that was not what it was. There was 2 guys sweeping up. There was no one down there. And that's when I really saw the red flags. We go downstairs. There's 2 guys sweeping up in a kitchen. He shoos them away.
Take a hike, guys. I'm about to show her my
and he
penis.
says, let me walk you through. And
masturbate in front of her. And she's going to love it. She'll appreciate it.
And a hallway, and the door out to this restaurant was locked. It was closed. And that's where he cornered me in this vestibule and leaned in and tried to kiss me, which I immediately rebuffed and said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I had no idea that that's what this was. I'm sorry. I have a very serious boyfriend, and I'm not interested. And I thought it would end there. Mm-hmm. But that's when he blocked the entrance or exit for me and said, well, then just stand there and be quiet.
I remember a Disney villain named Ursula who told Ariel the mermaid that, she doesn't need her voice. She should just stand there and be quiet and let her body do all the talking. She said it's she who holds her tongue who gets a man. In this case, it's she who holds her tongue who gets a job with Harvey Weinstein.
I had no idea what was going to happen, and it happened very quickly, and he immediately exposed himself and, began pleasuring himself. And I just stood there dumbfounded.
What are you thinking in this moment?
I was so shocked, disgusting, and kind of pathetic, really, to stand there and look at this man, but more than the disgusting act itself, which, of course, was gross, the demeaning part of it all, that just 20 minutes earlier he was having this great conversation with me and I felt so great and flattered by it, and then stand there and be quiet just a few minutes later just negated any warm feelings I had, and I realized, that's what this was all about.
When he was done, you say he finished.
Okay, let's not mince words here. He came to fruition. He busted his nut all over himself as he was watching this scared lady basically wonder what the hell was going on, why this strange old fat man was holding his penis and pleasuring himself.
When he was done, were there words exchanged?
He finished and I said, can I go now? I was pretty annoyed at that point that he had...
And what did he say?
Blocked my way. And he said, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's both go.
Let's both go. Let's both go. That was totally not awkward at all. Come on, we'll just go back to our tables like nothing has just happened. Like I didn't just basically kidnap you for 10 minutes or for a few minutes or however long it takes him to come to fruition. Well, let's just go back to our tables. We'll finish dinner. We'll have some dessert. Then we can go talk about a movie role for you. Did you know I'm famous?
Did you think at all in the moment about getting out of there, pushing past him while it was happening?
The truth is, yes. I mean, if I think back, I could have pushed past him. I mean, he's a large man, and so he was blocking the entrance. But, I mean, I think if my life was threatened, I absolutely would have been able to fight my way out. But the shock of what I was watching just kind of makes you frozen.
How long did it last?
I remember it being relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. I don't remember it going on that long. I was surprised.
Surprised about how efficiently Harvey Weinstein can go around sexually harassing women. That's really what is the surprising thing. It was surprising that he just whips out his penis and then about 30 seconds later he's got his rocks off, and then he could go back to dinner with this lady, and of course she would just love to sit down and talk about getting a job with this guy. Very, very inappropriate. Then, of course, Harvey Weinstein came out with an apology, which this lady saw as the last straw. Because what are you going to do? Apologize for being a complete and utter despicable creep?
That apology was the final straw for me. And so when I was, contacted by a reporter, that's when I said, oh, no, enough is enough with this guy.
I say enough is enough with the crocodile tears and lectures from Hollywood. We'll be right back.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. You can get me at Shaq General on Twitter. You can get me at the Disgruntled Millennial on Facebook. There's a lot of stuff going on my Facebook, on the Disgruntled Millennial Facebook. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in Northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. Unfortunately, I haven't been free from Democrat wieners, people who are Democrats in power who just cannot keep their penises in their pants. They just can't do it. They cannot do it. For some reason, we get to hear about patriarchy all day long, about how Donald Trump is a sexist and he grabbed him by the puss. But then we have audio coming out. We have allegations coming out of people who, it is undeniably so that Harvey Weinstein acted inappropriately at the very least, kidnapped and raped and sexually harassed at very worst, and basically we just get a bunch of crocodile tears from the left. But you know what? Nothing is as visceral as listening to the audio itself. So we have some found audio of Harvey Weinstein being a creep.
I'm telling you right now.
What do we have to do here?
Nothing. I'm going to take a shower. You sit there and have a drink. Water.
Don't drink. Can I stay on the bar?
No, you must come here now.
No.
Please.
No, I don't want to.
I'm not doing anything with you.
I know.
You're embarrassing me.
I'm sorry. I cannot. No, yesterday was a kind of aggressive for me. I need to know a person to be touched.
I won't do a thing.
I don't.
Do a thing, please. I swear I won't. Just sit with me. Don't embarrass me in the hotel.
No. I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable with this. Oh, don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me. Just sit here. Don't embarrass me in the hotel. Don't embarrass me at all. No. I just don't feel like it. I don't want to. Look, just sit down. 5 minutes. Come on, just 5 minutes. Whatever happened to no means no? This is one of those guys who thinks no means yes, and yes means butt sex. This is how entitled and bullying this man is. He cannot take no for an answer.
Here all the time.
I
sit
know,
with me.
but I don't
promise.
want to.
Please sit there. Please. 1 minute.
No,
I ask
I can't.
you. Go to the bathroom.
Please, I don't want to do something I don't want
Go
to.
to the bathroom. Come here. Listen to me.
I want to go downstairs.
I'm not going to do anything. Then you'll never see me again after this. Okay? That's it. If you embarrass me in this hotel.
I'm not embarrassing you. It's just that I don't feel comfortable.
I mean, don't have a fight with me in the
It's not
hall.
nice.
Please, I'm not going to do anything. I swear, my children. Please come in. On everything. I'm a famous guy.
No. I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to do anything I don't feel comfortable with. Come on. I'm a famous guy. That's going to make it different, right? I'm going to pull up my penis right now. I'm going to start masturbating right in front of you, and you're going to be okay with it because I'm a famous guy. Come on. Don't you want to be my friend? You don't want me to not be your friend. Trust me. You'll never see me again. You'll never work in Hollywood.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right
Please
now.
come in now. And 1 minute. And if you want to leave when the guy comes with my
Why
jacket, you can
yesterday
go.
you touched my breast?
Please, I'm sorry. Just Just come on, I'm used to that. Come on.
Are you used to that?
Yes, come in.
No, but I'm not used to
I
that.
won't do it again. Come on, sit here. Sit here for a minute, please.
No, I don't want to.
If you do this now, you will embarrass me. No. They will call me again. Okay? I'm sorry. I promise you I won't do anything.
I know, but yesterday was too
The
much.
guy's coming. I will never do another thing to you. 5 minutes. Don't ruin your friendship with me for 5 minutes.
I know, but it's kind of like, it's too much for me. I can't.
Please, you're making a big scene here.
No,
Please.
but I want to leave.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
David Mamet once said in one of his plays that sound is the crown jewel of all phenomena. More than sight, more than smell, but sound. Sound is the crown jewel of all phenomena. I tend to agree. That's one of the things that got me into audio. I just love sound. And when I hear sound like that, it makes me absolutely sick to my stomach, and thankful that there are so many neat recording devices where we can catch these creeps red-handed. We can catch them doing their dirty business. Ann Coulter weighed in on this whole Harvey Weinstein business. And of course, Ann Coulter is the object of leftist ire. Let's hear what she has to say about this. You know, considering what the leftists say about people like Ann Coulter and about conservatives, you would think that Ann Coulter is going to come out and say something like, ooh, we just love this institutional sexism. You go, Harvey Weinstein. You go, patriarchy. We just love this patriarchy. We love this kind of stuff, right? That's what you would expect Ann Coulter to say, considering what the leftists like to make of her. Let's actually listen to what she actually did say.
Doesn't it make you wonder how many fabulous actresses never got their chance and are still waitressing someplace because they did not avail themselves of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to watch Harvey Weinstein shower or touch that repulsive flesh of his? And how many actresses, you know, are huge stars because they were willing to do so?
Ashley Judd, Glenn Close, Meryl Streep. You know that whole thing where you cough and then you say something to be sarcastic? I think we should separate it. Meryl Streep, Ashley Judd, Glenn Close. Just so we're clear on who has been propagating this culture of secrecy in Hollywood.
Moreover, if there were, as with, Anthony Weiner, if he had been donating to Republicans, well, I'm sure you had made this point, but for Pete's sake, every Democrat in the country would be asked to disavow Harvey Weinstein, to send the money back, and not to just say, oh, I'm going to repurpose it to this other organization, which is apparently what they're now finally doing. When Todd Aiken, someone no one had ever heard of, made an awkward remark about abortion, very bad for Republicans, there wasn't a Republican on the face of the earth who wasn't asked about it. It was an election year. Romney had to respond to that. Didn't Anthony Weiner actually work for Chuck Schumer? Where the camera then? Of course, all the money that was accepted
Chuck Schumer
by
was
Schumer.
his mentor. Everybody describes Chuck Schumer as Anthony Weiner's mentor. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I keep flashing between the two of them, but it's basically the same case. Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton also got loads of money from Harvey Weinstein. Why are reporters not camped out on Hillary's lawn demanding comment on this? Why isn't Schumer asked to? Why isn't he asked for comment not only on Weinstein, but to send the money back? And how about we see the computers that Anthony Weiner was using in Chuck Schumer's office? Was he aware of any of this? No, there was no.
And I have some chilling sound for you. This is Harvey Weinstein talking about what he and Bill Clinton used to do together. Listen to this.
And I'm going to tell you, the president and I saw so many movies together. I'm not kidding, by the way. We saw so many movies together.
All I can think, Howie, is, wow, that is a guy I would like to see showering.
And you know what? All I can think right now is, how could it take Ashley Judd so long? This champion of feminism, this champion of women's rights. How could it, the nasty woman who we all came to know at her Women's March speech, her infamous Women's March speech.
I am a nasty woman. A I'm not as nasty as a man who looks like he bathes in Cheeto dust. A man whose words are a diss track to America. Electoral college sanctioned hate speech contaminating this national anthem. I'm not as nasty as Confederate flags being tattooed across my city. Maybe the South actually is gonna rise again. Maybe for some, it never really fell. Blacks are still in shackles and graves just for being black. Slavery has been reinterpreted as the prison system in front of people who see melanin as animal skin. I am not as nasty as a swastika painted on a pride flag. And I didn't know devils could be resurrected, but I feel Hitler in these streets. A mustache traded for a toupee. Nazis renamed the cabinet electroconversion therapy, the new gas chambers, shaming the gay out of America, turning rainbows into suicide notes. I am not as nasty as racism, fraud, conflict of interest, homophobia, sexual assault, transphobia, white supremacy, misogyny, ignorance, white privilege.
One leftist trope after another. White privilege, misogyny, institutional sexism, racism, they're Nazis, they're Confederates. One trope after another. That would have been a good time to mention. That would have been a very, very good time at the Women's March to mention her experience with Harvey Weinstein, where she was sexually harassed by Harvey Weinstein. No, she made fun of Donald Trump for powdering his face with Cheeto dust. Ashley Judd, you want to do something good for women? Stick a pie in it. You're not helping very much.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am guest hosting for the day. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. Now, we have been hearing a lot about this whole Harvey Weinstein business, and I've been spending a lot of time on it because I believe that it is important in an important aspect of the culture. And we're seeing a very, very interesting phenomenon where finally the New York Times is actually doing some reporting. Hollywood elites are actually coming out now that there is indisputable proof that this madman, this fat, disgusting, slobbering, ogre has basically come out with this evidence. There's this evidence that he is absolutely guilty of all the rumors that have been going on for decades that all these Hollywood elites have been keeping silent. And now one of the ironic things about all these, about all the exposés and Ashley Judd and Meryl Streep and Glenn Close coming out with their fake crocodile tears and their anger and their upset. Where were they? Where have they been? Could it be that those people have profit from this culture in Hollywood, from this casting couch culture in Hollywood? Could it be that they have profit from this culture and now the writing is on the wall? Now they're all of a sudden, they've all of a sudden grown a conscience. They've all of a sudden grown a conscience. They are now appalled. They are now upset. Kevin Smith, who admitted to having been the first 15 years of his career were funded basically by Harvey Weinstein. Is he going to give that money back? Is he going to give all that money back? I don't really think he is going to give that money back. But the platitudes are enough. The platitudes are enough. Apparently, Harvey Weinstein has admitted himself into a rehabilitation facility. Listen, Mr. Harvey Weinstein, nothing can rehabilitate you from being an awful, terrible human being. You're going to need something more spiritual than what they're going to offer you at this sex addiction rehabilitation center, where you get to basically go and apologize, give a couple little platitudes, talk about how sorry you are, talk about how awful you feel about all the people that you've hurt, and then you go on about your business doing the exact same thing. But we're not going to forget about this. We are not going to forget about this. This is going to be in our memories for a long time because you won't let us forget. You won't stop lecturing us, Hollywood. You won't stop shoving your political agendas down our throats. And when it turns out you can't even uphold your own values, your own alleged values, this is what makes people think that you're all just a bunch of disingenuous, entitled elites. Disingenuous, entitled elites. Ashley Judd, you could have come out a long time ago. You could have made this known a long time ago, but you didn't. Because it doesn't suit your political agenda. Because Harvey Weinstein is a Democrat. Harvey Weinstein is friends with Bill Clinton. Harvey Weinstein has watched movies with Bill Clinton. I wonder what kind of movies they've watched. Now, when the left basically excuses a president of the United States, a sitting president of the United States, for sexual harassment and rape allegations, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. And then, of course, the evidence came out and the left didn't care. They said, oh, I don't care what he does personally in his personal life. I just care that he's a good president. Harvey Weinstein's buddy, Bill Clinton. I'm noticing a trend here. I'm noticing a trend that when it's a Democrat, that when it's a liberal who commits these heinous acts towards women and towards other people, that they get a free pass. They get a free pass. Now, is the Women's March going to lead a march on Washington for everyone to disavow all Harvey Weinstein movies and all people who have ever worked with Harvey Weinstein? You got half of Hollywood right there. If any of these Hollywood elites who are basically pretending to be outraged at Harvey Weinstein, if any of them had a shred of integrity, if any of them had a shred of consistency, they'd go through their bank accounts, they'd go through their bank statements and give back every penny that was given to them that was even remotely had anything to do with Harvey Weinstein. They would be boycotting his films. They would be leading marches to boycott all of their own films. They'd be leading the march to boycott their own films. But the left has never really had a problem with misogyny. They never really had a problem with sexism. They don't really have a problem with this dark, macabre culture where everyone knows but nobody says. I venture to say that the only reason these Hollywood elites are even coming out in the first place is so that they can get ahead of the game, so that they can position themselves so that they aren't the ones to be boycotted, because they know. They've known about this for a long time. They've kept their mouths shut, and only now are they coming out because Harvey Weinstein is a little less relevant than he used to be. So, I mean, it's not going to affect their career that much. But who knows, maybe their residuals will be affected if there was some mass boycott on Ashley Judd's movies. Feminists should be outraged at Ashley Judd. She knew, and she kept it quiet the whole time. But then again, like I said, leftists have never really had a problem with sexism. They've never really had a problem with outrageous rhetoric. They've never really had a problem criticizing women. As long as you're on the right, you can basically say whatever you want about someone. But if you're on the left, you get to keep all your dirty secrets. What pisses me off is that if Ashley Judd had some integrity, maybe a lot of these women never would have been harassed by that ogre Harvey Weinstein. Again, you are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. You can get me at Shaq General. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. It might be time to boycott me. Are you a proud social justice warrior? Do you believe that the so-called facts of reality are nothing more than racist, irrelevant social constructs perpetuated by white supremacy? If you answered yes to both of these questions, you must boycott the Disgruntled Millennial. The Disgruntled Millennial threatens the very existence of humanity. He espouses dangerous ideas like small government, school choice, property rights, and worst of all, he shoots guns. He's practically Hitler. You
must act now. Conservatives are becoming more and more emboldened to make their own life decisions. We can't let that happen. So whether you're drawing on coloring books in your safe space or setting police cars on fire, always remember to hashtag boycott the DM. That's boycott the DM. Boycott the DM. Boycotts work.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Now, in a world where automatic self-esteem, participation trophies, toxic masculinity culture, many men are finding it harder and harder to be happy in relationships. Boys are taught that they are nothing more than broken girls who need to sit down, shut up, and do as they're told. And many women are taught that it is their job to fix them, to rid them of these natural, inborn, competitiveness and masculinity. And if you translate a lot of these lessons into adulthood, romantic and interpersonal relationships, you get a lot of emasculated men who end up sacrificing their own happiness, time, and resources to the whims of women who may be catastrophically wrong for them. Today, my guest is Dr. Sean Smith. He is the author of A Tactical Guide to Women, How Men Can Manage Risk in Dating and Marriage. I heard his interview on the Andrew Klavan show a couple days ago, and his interview hit so close to home that I immediately went and bought the book. I just finished reading it, and my head is now spinning with coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I'm 34. I'm not married. I have no kids. And let's just say the longer I wait, the harder it's going to be. So, Dr. Smith, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Brett.
Many relationships these days are shrouded with over-the-top emotions, and few couples slow down to take the time to do a more scientific approach to ensure the happiness in their lives. And a lot of them end up flying by the seat of their pants. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you got into this field of study and why it is that it's so important that men stop and take a breath and think about where they're going in their relationships.
Well, the backstory on this book is that I've been a clinical psychologist for a little over a decade now, and working with a lot of couples and working with a lot of men, and seeing these men come through my office just over and over again, guys who had been just devastated by the wrong relationships, financially devastated, personally devastated, losing access to their kids when they've been good fathers, the family court system just basically sodomizing them. And they're not all horror stories, but certainly enough of them to make me start looking for patterns in what these guys were doing and how they were bringing these, as you put it, catastrophically wrong women into their lives.
You talk about your book. In your book, you talk a little bit about the high value man, because I think one of the really great, it's not like you would think. The book sort of has a misleading title. I think it makes it sound very terse, I guess you could say, like not as emotional as you would think as relationships would be. But one of the most important questions I think that you ask right off the bat is, why am I a man that deserves a good woman? How do I become that sort of man? I think you automatically sort of lead into the kind of introspection that it would take to actually get something out of this book. And then, of course, you lead into how, these are qualities that you should also seek in women. But what does it mean to be a high-valued man?
Well, for that definition, I turn to evolutionary psychology, which looks a lot at why women and men choose each other. And the definition that comes out of evolutionary psychology of a high-value man, it doesn't have much to do with money, although money can be a proxy for a high-value man. It has to do with his ability to provision and his willingness to stick around. Those two words, ability and willingness. And these are the things that women are keyed into, like biologically predisposed to look for in a man. And these are good qualities to have. A guy who's willing to stick around and raise children and be invested in offspring, and who's able to connect and maintain that connection. And so that shows up in a lot of proxy behaviors that women look for. They look for guys who have a social network, and I'm not talking about a bunch of Facebook friends, but right. Actual connections to the world, and a sense of humor, which speaks to intelligence. And so these basic issues that women, or basic qualities that women seek in men.
Right. So women aren't necessarily after money. They're after a man who can do, money is sort of an indicator of deeper qualities that allow a man to be more protective, and that allow him to be more able to, to engage in these kinds of, these things that satisfy women. It's not necessarily about the money is one of the points that you make. You also talk about masculinity. Now, these days, masculinity, the whole idea of masculinity, it's sort of a moving target. And I want to try to nail that down, because these days it can be like nailing Jell-O to the wall, what it is to be masculine and what that means for relationships.
Yeah, masculinity, I can answer this on two levels. I'll give you my personal answer, and then I'll give you my professional answer. My personal answer is, I'm just sick to death of watching men walk around being apologetic for being men. And I'm sick and tired of that small minority of women who demand that we stop being men, when the vast majority of women actually want us to be men, and they want to connect with men. If they wanted to date women, they date women. And so that's my personal answer. But the professional answer is that there's this common sense recognition that men like women and women like men, and that we're different, but we're equal, and we make each other better. And believe it or not, there is some research out there that's starting to back that up. Like the researchers that are typically very socially justice oriented, there are researchers out there that are starting to catch up with the common sense, and they are starting to confirm that, hey, you know what? Women actually like masculine men.
Right. It's like they want you to not be men, but then as soon as you become more feminine, they hate you. They don't respect you.
Well, I think that a fully mature woman, and any woman that's really worth connecting with romantically, appreciates masculinity. But this is a false dichotomy that I think men set up. So many of our problems that we have with women, they begin and end with us, because we're the ones making the choice to bring them into our lives, and vice versa. They're choosing us. So whatever problems they have with men begins and ends with them for the most part. But we got to take responsibility for what we're bringing into our lives. And there's a false dichotomy we set up where we think that we have to be a dick or we have to be a doormat. And those are the only two options. And that's really, women are not really looking for either one of those. They're looking for a man, typically healthy women are looking for a man who understands what his values are and is willing to defend those values. And he can be the nicest guy in the world, who will get his back up when his values are challenged. And that is what, healthy women are looking for. And that's what men should be looking for in women too.
I agree. Practically speaking, though, how would that manifest in a relationship? Like as something anecdotal, if you don't mind.
Sure. An anecdotal, an example would be getting straight to the relationship. Okay, so you're dating a woman, and the future mother-in-law, because you're thinking about marrying this woman, starts expressing a lot of opinions about how the relationship is going and how you're going to raise your children, and starts sticking her nose in and being a little overly directive. And a value-driven response, a masculine response, would be to approach the woman in question and say, I'm a little concerned about what your mother's doing. If I'm going to be a father, I'm going to be a father, and I'm not going to be taking direction from people. I will take input, but not direction. And defending values early on about how I run my life, how I serve the people around me, and what I'm willing to defend. And so that would be an example. Sorry, let me turn that off. That would be an example of standing up for your values, knowing what they are, and not backing away from them.
Right. I in my own personal experience, I've run into that problem with in-laws where I would, pretty much do exactly what you said. Pretty nice and easygoing, but when the back is up against the wall, you have to say something. And I was met with a lot of hostility from the woman. Again, we are here with Dr. Sean Smith. He is talking to us about how men can navigate relationships and marriage and not get hosed by the system. And all it takes is just making a few good decisions with your relationships and with your life. We'll be right back with Dr. Sean Smith.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
In my own personal experience, I've run into that problem with in-laws where I would, pretty much do exactly what you said. Pretty nice and easygoing, but when the back is up against the wall, you have to say something. And I was met with a lot of hostility from the woman. Is that a sort of signal? Is that some sort of red flag, would you say, or of a woman who might not necessarily appreciate that kind of, not non-toxic masculinity, I guess you would say, regular, normal masculinity?
Well, I would definitely say that's a bad sign for the relationship, because it's a woman who is going to be in conflict with you over your values. And that's a very bad way to start the relationship. I certainly wouldn't want to go forward with that woman and actually create a family when I know right off the bat, she's shown me off the bat that there's going to be conflict. And this is the sort of mistake men make. They will walk into these situations ignoring those red flags.
Right. Well, I didn't ignore them. I sort of I had internalized them, and I sort of let it eat me up a little bit. I didn't walk away, but it's like seeing the red flags. It's kind of hard. This is one of the reasons why I had to read the book right away. It's because I'm really, really in tune and sensitive to all these things. But it's just finding the courage to do what's right for me is where I sort of lapse a little bit. But I recognize it, and then it just ends up eating me up inside. And one of the things you also talk about in your book is that there's a lot of misconceptions about men, that men aren't skilled at relationships, that men are not great communicators, that men are just competitive, and they're not good at relationships. I've seen that manifest in my relationships as well. Just this sort of blanket idea that, you're not communicating well, and it sort of has to do with the fact that I'm not communicating well because I can't, because I'm a man.
Right, and women will sometimes play this card, and my profession really buys into this idea. And my profession is not, the clinicians who are on the front line aren't hostile toward men. I don't think I've met very few people out of academia who are hostile toward men. Now, in academia, it's a different story, but out here in the real world, there still remains this bias that women are the ones who know how to communicate. They're more nurturing, and women do know how to communicate very well in certain ways, but men also know how to communicate very well in certain ways. For example, some research that came out a few years ago looked at the effect of testosterone when men are doing something as a team, and raising the barn, or they're fighting with a platoon, or whatever they're doing, and that there's a lot of there are some pheromones in our sweats that gets us communicating well and gets us on the same team, and actually creates this bond. And men can do a sort of nonverbal communication and have an intimacy that women can't even approach in certain situations. And so it's really important to find a woman who understands that the communication from the genders is equal but different, and that men bring something to the table too.
Right. And I think in a lot of ways, modern men have been steered away from this kind of idea with participation trophies. There's no winners, no losers. Everyone is the same. And then you have that Stuart Smalley thing. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. And in the end, it explains, this could explain why modern men seem to be so emasculated and anti-male themselves, and it could explain also why they sort of succumb to a lot of these pressures to get into these toxic relationships. These days women have the advantage, and at the end of the day, it just a lot of men can end up feeling defeated with the way things are sort of in the culture.
Yeah, and part of it is you mentioned earlier when you were talking about this early values conflict that you had with a woman, and how you were tormented by that. You didn't follow through, and I'm glad you didn't, but that it sort of ate at you. And I'm not going to speak for you. You tell me if this fits for you, that as men, we are taught that we are here to serve society and to serve women. And I don't have a problem with that role. I like that role, but it puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage when we're told that we're wrong, because if we have this motive to please and to serve, then we can internalize a lot of stuff that we shouldn't be internalizing, and we can sacrifice our values and our goals and our purpose on the planet.
Yeah, that's basically what it's come down to. And honestly, your book was illuminating, but at the same time, what it did was sort of showed me a lot of things that I already knew and recognized in past relationships, because I have I have a history for basically, picking the kind of women that you would say are not good for me, I guess you could say, to put it mildly. We're talking personality stuff, personality disorders. We're talking about narcissistic disorders. And I'm not going to diagnose anyone. I'm not going to be like that lady who tried to diagnose the president without even meeting with him. But after reading your book, it was really hard to ignore that, that I did try my hardest to communicate with people who were impossible to communicate with, because they lacked introspection. They lacked they lacked the skill to turn their emotions inwards and to analyze their own self. And I found that as I've been doing that since I was a child. And when you meet with someone and you get with someone and you fall in love with someone who doesn't do that, it makes everything that much harder and that much more toxic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't know what your history is, but I would guess that at some point, there was some training, whether it was intentional or not, that taught you this is how relationships work. And so most of us, if we don't really do some introspection, then we go out into the world and we repeat what we were shown. And if we were shown good things, then we lucked out. But if we were shown bad things and we're not careful, then we repeat those bad things and those unproductive relationships.
All right. Well, my father died when I was young from hemophilia-related AIDS. So, I mean, I didn't want it just to turn into like, we can psychoanalyze me if you want to, but, my father died when I was a kid, and my mom had two boyfriends growing up. Neither of them wanted kids. Neither of them cared about having kids or were proactive in any way at all. I'm not blaming her for that, but, there are things that have happened to me where I might have sort of internalized the woman-centric. My mom was the one who was taking care of us our whole lives, and I never really had like a strong male figure to show me about certain things. And it was one of those things where it's like, you can't blame anyone. He died from AIDS. It's not like I can blame my mom for like leaving a good man or whatever, but of course it's had its residual effects, and that's one of the reasons why I've taken it why I've taken it to be such an important thing to always look inwards, see how it is that I am contributing to whatever discomfort or negative situation that I'm having. But it has definitely affected my relationships in the end, and I end up picking these girls who have these negative qualities, and I'm like, I don't want to be a fixer, but I end up being sort of a fixer.
Yeah, in the book, I spend about the first third of the book with some pretty heavy introspection and asking guys to size themselves up the way you sized yourself up, and what are your motivations. And then I spend about 2/3 of the book on bare minimum job requirements for any woman that you're going to bring into your life. Because when you bring a woman into your life, you're bringing all of her best qualities and all of her worst qualities. So you want to have more of the best qualities and less of the worst qualities. But yeah, what can I tell you about that? Where do you want to start?
Let's talk about some of the basic positive qualities in women that you would say are sort of non-negotiable, and then we can dive into some of the extra, some of the toxic stuff that are sort of non-negotiable negatives, I guess you could say, some of the deal breakers.
Yeah, and I don't, in the book, I'll say that I don't talk about who's going to be a good fit for you, because in the first part of the book, I ask you to look at your values and really nail those values down so that you know what's good for you. But then getting into like the second or the last 2/3 of the book, the basic bare requirements, emotional skills that anyone should have, but I've broken it more down toward women, is clarity, maturity, and stability. If you can remember those three things as you're starting to date a woman, clarity being things like how well does she carry herself in relationships, and how well does she communicate. Going back to that communication issue, women tend to be very good with words more so than men, but just because she's a good communicator when the sky is blue doesn't mean that those skills are going to hold when you're going through some kind of challenge in life. So making sure that she has the skills when things are difficult, knowing that she's not going to check out when things are difficult, knowing that she is assertive is very important. That if a woman's going to be in a relationship with a guy, she needs to be assertive about what she wants and what she needs, because if she's not assertive, then that's a setup for both of you to have serious problems down the road. And then maturity, basic coping skills, and these are things that you can look for over time. And I'm a big advocate of dating women for a fairly lengthy period of time. In the pickup artist community, there's this idea of shit testing a woman to see how she'll respond. But I find that manipulative. You don't have to shit test a woman, because life is going to shit test her. And then you can see how she responds. You can see how she responds to the situation, how she responds to having you by her side. And you can get a sense of what her coping skills are. And I outline some of the basic coping skills like resilience and internalizing responsibility and taking care of herself. And then the third leg of this triad is stability. Mental stability basically is she's struggling with mental health issues. And if she's struggling with mental health issues, that's not necessarily a bad sign. The bad sign is if she has something like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, personality disorders, and she refuses to get treatment for them, because that's only going to get worse. And so these are like the basic. Don't even date somebody who hasn't developed these skills yet.
Right. And this is a triad. In other words, none of them, the structure won't stand without at least all three of the legs standing. Again, we are here with Dr. Sean Smith. We'll be right back with more. We're going to talk about personality disorders.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
I've worked with a lot of couples and a lot of guys, and I've seen a lot of relationships from the inside. And you got to have at least these three things.
All right. Well, then let's dive a little bit into clarity, maturity, and stability, because I want to know, anecdotally, what kind of things, like what kind of examples can I see in a relationship for, if she does this and then I say this, and how does the situation go where I can zero in on these qualities and say, okay, she embodies this or she lacks this?
The ability to just work through a problem. When couples come to me and they're dealing with whatever problem it is, they're fighting over the dog, or they're fighting over the in-laws, or they're fighting over someone had an affair, whatever it is, I'm really more concerned with how they're talking about it. And so one of the biggest things is when you get into an argument with this woman, how does the argument go? Is it short, brief, and productive, or does it go on? And does it never end? Is she bringing in everything that's ever happened? Just that ability to stay focused on the issue and try to seek a solution.
Okay. Yeah. In my past, I've been in situations where, there's no clarity. It becomes just a big show. Right. You try to approach a situation with, with upfront, direct, nothing attacking, no, like, you're a bad person because of this. Just, I would appreciate it if we would do this, or if you would do this, or if you not do this. Nothing goes further than that until it gets to the other person's ears, and then it becomes, you hate me, I'm a bad person, and you're wrong. It's actually you that's the aggressor in this case, and I can't believe you're saying these things to me.
Yeah, for sure. And you got to be mindful that us men need to be mindful that women communicate a little differently. They see things differently. In general, we tend to focus on the here and now and getting toward a solution. And in general, they tend to focus more on themes. And one of the big complaints men have about women is that if she's mad at me about this one thing, then she brings up all these other seemingly unrelated issues from the past. And it's not necessarily that women are always trying to punish us or be manipulative. It's that they're seeing a larger theme that needs to be solved, whereas we're seeing a discrete incident that needs to be solved. And so if a man and a woman can get that we're coming from these different perspectives, then it works out fine.
I will be honest, it's possible that because I was raised by my mom in this way, but I'm also very theme oriented too. Yeah. So, that could be a reason, but at the same time, I can also zero in on a specific circumstance, get into the mud, get into the nitty gritty of a circumstance, and decide, okay, where did we just go wrong? Figure that out. To me, that is a good part. To me, that is an important part of clarity and, making sure that fights end productively. Is there anything else about that you want to add before going on to maturity?
About clarity, I think I already talked about, there's one quality that I really haven't talked about that's really important, and that's inquisitiveness. And this falls under the heading of clarity and communication is she inquisitive? So if you come to her with a complaint or she's angry about something, does she jump to conclusions and respond to what's going on in her head and the story that her head is telling her? Because we all have that. Or does she focus her attention outward onto the situation and onto you and asking honest, curious questions about what's going on with you and what's going on with the situation? So is she attending to reality, or is she attending to the story in her head? It's a very important thing to look for.
Absolutely. I'm going to need to hire you after we're done with this. All right. Maturity. Let's talk a little bit about that, because that is a big one. I'm really glad we're going into the weeds on this, because this triad, it's not going to stand without each of these. So let's talk about maturity.
Maturity. Probably one of the most important characteristics for a man to look for in a woman, and vice versa, this applies equally well to women, is an internal sense of control over the world, internalizing responsibility, versus a person who is always a victim of what's going on. The fault is always somebody else's. If you've dated somebody who every boss they've had has been a jerk, well, they're probably not a very good employee, but they're not seeing it. Or every landlord they've had has ripped them off. Well, they probably have ripped off their landlord, but they're not seeing it. And here's a really big red flag. If you're dating somebody and every one of their previous boyfriends or husbands fell from grace and became the bad guy, well, guess what's going to happen to you? That's what's in your future. So finding somebody who can internalize responsibility for what's happening in their life and where they're headed, and not shift the blame outward.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that circumstance too, where, you are on this pedestal. They love you. They want to spend the rest of their lives with you. And then the next second, but when they talk about other people, it's like, oh, that person's such a piece of shit. That person's a piece of shit. My mom's a piece of shit. My dad's a piece of shit. Everybody's a piece of shit. And they project all their feelings. And I swear, I mean, this is one of those moments when I was reading your book that I was like, I had this feeling like 10 years ago, and I was in this really terrible, terrible relationship. And if I had just acknowledged it, then I would have saved me a lot of heartache, where, literally from one day to the next, I became the enemy, the bad person. And to fall from grace like that, it's like when someone puts you up on a pedestal, it's a tough fall. And, a lot of times, look, men are emotional too. These things affect us as well. And if I had stayed with that woman, it would have been a nightmare. It would have been hellish. My mom says I dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah, it sounds like it for sure. And that sounds like, I'm like you. I'm not gonna diagnose somebody from afar. So I don't know the woman, don't know what her story was. But when you get that sense that you are being idealized beyond what you would expect in the honeymoon phase, and you're always going to be idealized in the honeymoon phase, but when it feels a little excessive to you, and you feel like, oh my God, there's only one way to go, and it's down. And you get that sense that 1 minute you're the good guy, the next minute you're the bad guy, and there's not much gray area, or the people in her life are all good guys or bad guys, and she's not viewing people as a mix of qualities and complex individuals. Then you got to start wondering a little bit about just some basic characterological features.
I agree 100%. And it's one of those things that's hard to get away from, especially as a man. We like to have our egos stroked. When someone tells you, I love you, I've never loved anybody like you before, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, I want to be with you for the rest of my life, and blah, 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 the whole entire bit, and you just had one date or two dates, then, anyway, I totally understand what you're saying, and it has been alarming in the past when that kind of stuff has happened. But guys will be guys, I guess, and this is exactly why we're here, so we can figure out exactly what to do when these things happen. Let's talk a little bit about stability. In the book, I have a basic little primer on personality disorders and depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and unresolved emotional injury. And the reason I talk about this is that anybody who's going to go out into the dating arena needs to have some basic knowledge about mental health. And this isn't about diagnosing anybody, and this isn't about treating anybody, because it's not your business to diagnose or to treat anybody, but not you personally. But if you're out dating somebody, it's just not productive to diagnose and treat. But having some basic understanding of what to look for with things like depression, anxiety, because they're out there. And the reason men need to be particularly mindful of this is because men and women do depression and anxiety slightly different on average. We show different signs when we're depressed, and so we don't always recognize it in the other gender. They don't recognize it in us, and we don't recognize it in them. So it's really important to know what to look for, and knowing what kind of questions to ask when you're dating somebody. Just like I'm a big advocate that women should be inquisitive about men. Well, we need to be inquisitive too. We need to ask questions like, so what was it growing up around your house? What was that like? And how are your parents and what's going on there? And being very inquisitive about her history and her state of mental health and how she handles things, so that if there's a red flag, then you can follow up and ask, well, are you getting some help with this? Right. I definitely want to dive deep into that, because that's actually one of the things I've been saving. It's a very fascinating subject to me: borderline personality, histrionic personality, depression, anxiety. So that's some of the stuff I've suffered with. Some of the stuff, it's short of being a psychiatrist or a psychologist, it's like I'm looking at it in black and white. When you look at the symptoms and the effects of these disorders, in some ways, being in an interpersonal relationship and seeing the day-to-day functions of people, you're even more. I mean, if you're keen, then you can be even more. You can have even more insight than probably even a doctor. Though I wouldn't try to diagnose, I would definitely send someone to a doctor, but being aware of that kind of stuff is really important. But first, let's talk a little bit about some of the negative qualities that you should just look out for right away, that people are sort of, that people can be blinded to by the hormones in the beginning of a relationship, and then tie you down and lock you into a relationship that is going to cause unhappiness. Again, we are here with Dr. Sean Smith, the writer of A Tactical Guide to Women. We are going to talk some more with him because this, let's face it, this is some very, very fascinating stuff. I am Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, subbing in for the great Kevin Jackson. I broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. And after we're done with this interview with Dr. Sean Smith, I'm going to be free from bad relationships. We'll be right back. You're definitely going to want to stay tuned for more. Get me at Shaq General on Twitter.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. I am Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. You can get me at Shack General. That's Shack General on Twitter. You could also get me on Facebook. We got a lot of stuff going on there. We got the latest in news. We got the latest in culture. We're one of those sites that we don't only post right-wing sites. We post left-wing sites too, because nothing really explains the evil of leftism like the leftists themselves. We are here today with Sean Smith. We have been talking a lot about relationships. We've been talking about a lot about how men can navigate through relationships in the modern day. In the modern day, men sort of get hosed. Men get the shaft by relationships. And Sean Smith sees who we're going to pick, who men pick as a mate, as being one of the utmost important things that a man can do. And it should really take you should really put a lot of thought into who it is that you are going to be with. And noticing the negative qualities early is sort of something that Sean Smith has said that is one of the important things to do, because men can save themselves bitter, nasty, contentious divorces by just simply making good decisions early on in a relationship. Let's talk a little bit more with Sean Smith about that.
Well, it's important to figure them out early on, because the cost of choosing poorly for men it can be devastating. I'll give you a quick example. A guy recently who married the wrong woman, and he had a fairly high-paying job. They had a couple of kids, and when they got divorced, it was a contentious divorce, because the person that you divorce is never the person that you marry. You find out all kinds of interesting things about the person you're divorcing. Now, I'm not divorced, but I hear this from divorce attorneys and people who've gone through it. And what happened with this guy was that essentially she got child custody or primary custody because he worked all the time and she didn't. And after the divorce, she decided to leave the state, take the kids with her. He had no legal recourse over that because she was a primary custodian, and he couldn't really follow her because he needed this high-paying job to pay for his children and his ex-wife, who are now in another state. That's why it's important to do the work at the front end, so that you don't have that terrible day in family court at the back end. And I forgot the rest of your question because I got on that soapbox.
It's okay. We can expand on that, because it is kind of a shoddy deal when you consider everything in family court and the fact that, there's so much more access these days to, for both men and for women. But as you stated, men end up getting the shaft. And, one of the things you also mentioned in your book is that men are constantly having to earn their manhood, and women sort of just show up to the party and, they're women. So in that sort of way, it can lead men down a very, very, very dark road if he gives all of his resources, his time, his energy to this one relationship that turns out to just be a catastrophic disaster. I think it adds some gravitas to the book and makes it all that more important for us to get on this quick.
On the flip side of that, if I could make a quick point here, I do want to point out that a good marriage, a good partnership, is the best thing that can happen to a guy. There's a lot of research. We live longer, we're happier, we're healthier, we make more money, we have more sex. Life is just better when we have that good one. And so that's why men really need that dichotomy, is really why men need to approach this as a risk management question, because it's an investment that can pay off immeasurably, or it can destroy you.
Right. And having the conversation with a female might not, that conversation, like, all right, let's take this relationship and dissect it and make it in, it's like, that's not like a comfortable conversation for most people to have, much less most women, I think, to have. How getting past that without trying to make the other person seem like a bad person, or without trying to demonize the other person, might be, it might be something that people who are already in these relationships could look at, but nipping it in the bud ahead of time is sort of where you're going with the book. So let's talk a little bit about some negative qualities of women that we need to just avoid. Like what is it that, and of course there could be men could also embody these qualities, but how do you guide men in the way of negative qualities of women, qualities we should stay away from?
Well, negative qualities, oftentimes just the flip side of the good qualities that we've talked about, good communication versus really poor communication. But then there's some overriding stuff that really just doesn't make for a very good partner on either end. And things like substance abuse that a person's unwilling to get treatment for. Now, having said that, let me say that somebody who goes through substance abuse recovery can make a better partner than somebody who doesn't, because they've developed just a ton of skills like insight and introspection and accountability and so forth that other people may not have occasion to go out and develop. But that person who's unwilling to get it treated is not going to work. It's going to destroy the relationship. And things like personality disorders, again, that a person refuses to get treated. You've mentioned personality disorders a couple of times. You want to delve into that a bit?
To me, this is probably the most fascinating part of the book, because I've seen it. I think I've seen it. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose this, but if I were a betting man and you stuck a gun to my head, I would say that I've definitely come in to some of these situations. So let's talk about borderline personality disorder and the kind of how that manifests in a relationship if one of the person has that.
Well, that particular disorder is diagnosed more so in women, and the numbers are all over the place because there's different ways of measuring it, but a safe estimate is that somewhere around 5 to 7% of the population has some kind of personality disorder at some point in their life, and people tend to overcome them with age just as they develop more coping skills. But let's talk about what a personality disorder is. It's basically a dysregulation of emotion and an inability to manage relationships in any kind of productive way. And borderline personality disorder is one that's diagnosed more often in women, whether that's because of diagnostic bias or reality. It's up for debate, but regardless, it does tend to show up more in women. And men need to be very mindful of it, because dating somebody with a personality disorder on that end of the spectrum, like borderline or narcissism or psychopathy, it can feel amazing in the beginning because you're idealized and this person is charismatic and they're an animal in the bedroom and they're just, it feels great. And it's really easy to get drawn into that. What happens with personality disorders is that relationships start off great and then they fall apart. And that's the pattern to look for. And one of the things to look for in a woman is have her relationships all just ended in a flaming wreck, professional and personal. But being really mindful of like who she's surrounding herself with and what those relationships look like and how she conceptualizes other people. Are they good and bad? Good and evil, or does she see the world in shades of gray? And can she see that somebody, she can be angry at somebody and still love them?
All right, we got a hard break coming up. We're on with Sean Smith. We'll be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road, and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am your host, Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in Northern Florida, where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. Now, we are talking with Dr. Sean Smith, the writer of A Tactical Guide to Women, How Men Can Manage Risk in Marriage and Dating. And we are going to talk a little bit about some anecdotal stories that the good doctor has about women who might embody certain negative traits that men ought to stay away from.
Well, I've known just dozens of guys who have married women who are either narcissistic, in my estimation. You can't diagnose somebody that I've never met, but the symptoms that I describe and the behaviors that they describe, clearly narcissistic or borderline. And typically, when you start looking at these guys' history, one thing has happened. They all have in common is that they moved too quickly into these relationships. They didn't give themselves a chance to really get a sense for what these women were doing in the world. There is, we talk about the honeymoon phase. We're all aware of what that is, but there's been recently some actual study into what that is. And it turns out that somewhere between 6 and 18 months, our neurochemistry is different when we're in love with somebody. And so we're not the same person that we typically are. We're not seeing the world in the same way that we usually do, and they're not the same person. And so there's that period where our brains are not to be trusted. Our brains and our hearts are idiots until we start to come back to baseline. And so guys make this mistake of jumping into these relationships that feel great, and then a couple years down the road, they're going, oh my God, what's going on here? I'm walking on eggshells all the time. This woman is making me insane.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They one of the things that I noticed is that from the man's point of view, it's really easy to get into a relationship with one of these people because they, once they decide what they want, that kind of person will literally do everything, use every trick and tool in their arsenal to lock it down and to make you hers. And they put all the stops come off, and you really have to be really keen as to what's going on and to make sure you're cognizant of how you're being put up on that pedestal and how, like you said, how they treat their friends, how they treat their family, how they describe their ex-boyfriends and whatnot. Because to be, like I said, like we like to have our ego stroked. And if you're really not careful, if you're really not cognizant, that can be, it could be one of those things that just leads you down a rabbit hole of absolute disaster and misery. Because like you said, you inevitably fall from grace and then you become the bad guy. You become the oppressor.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. And one of the reasons it's so easy to do is that people with personality disorders, I meet very few people who are actually nefarious and malevolent. People, particularly people with borderline personality disorder, they're in pain all the time. Right. And they don't typically, if it's just straight up borderline personality disorder, they're not trying to hurt people. They're trying to get close to people, and they're trying to deal with this horrible sense of abandonment that they keep recreating over and over again. And so when they're coming at you with all of that love and that sex and that affection, that idealization, it's not because they're trying to get over on you. It's because they're actually hoping for a good relationship here. And so that can deceive us into a false sense of safety that there's nothing bad going on here, because at that point there is nothing bad going on.
Right. And on the converse side, even when this person would fight with you, you can still see that sort of, it's not like you can see that they're more in pain than you could see that they're sort of fearful of losing the relationship and not trying to to be a jerk to you necessarily, but they can't help themselves. It's like this compulsive thing that metastasizes and just grows out of these ruminating feelings, I guess.
Yeah, and since we're getting a little bit in the weeds here, I've not seen studies on this, but I'm fairly well convinced, having seen enough anecdotal evidence, that borderline personality disorder is a direct contributor to domestic violence charges, because there's this dynamic where the person with borderline disorder and the person who doesn't have it will get into a conflict and an argument. And the overwhelming urge of that person with borderline disorder is to solve this problem right now, get the relationship back to where it was, feel love again, eliminate this feeling of abandonment. And so that compels them to stay and fight because they're trying to fix the problem. Whereas the other person may be in need of a break, and they may desperately need to step away, or they may recognize that this is going nowhere. But the person with borderline disorder can't let them go away. And so things escalate from that point, and somebody ends up getting arrested.
Right. Well, I've seen a lot of that that manifest also in other ways where, that emotions are just totally disregarded and brushed under the rug, and an explosive thing will happen, and then nothing, then it's sort of like, the emotions are literally brushed under the rug, and you see a happy smiley face, but you know that there's something going on underneath. Now, maybe that's something totally different. Here's the thing. This is why I definitely need to talk, because you can't go around diagnosing your partners and your lovers. That's not a way to a good relationship. What about histrionic disorder? Because that seems to be something that affects women a little more than men as well.
Yeah, I'm not a huge expert on that because you just don't see it very often. And there is some thought in the field that the disorder doesn't really exist, that it's a mix of other things. And what is a diagnosis anyway? A diagnosis is just we decide that we're going to clump these symptoms together and put a label on it. But histrionic disorder, this is a person who has to have attention to the point where it's actually damaging their relationships. Like they can't handle it when you're having an issue and you need some help because they have to be the center of attention. So for example, I gave the example in the book of a guy who was dating somebody who might fit into this category. And he got a call at work one day that his father was in the hospital, father in another city. So he had to get out of work and arrange some things and get on a flight, and he had to get to the other city quickly. So he's calling his girlfriend who is living with him to try to get her to help him out with a few things. And she starts talking about her cat because her cat is ill and her cat has been to the vet. And what should I do about my cat? And all these questions and all this nonsense about the cat when his father was in crisis. And so that might be an example of somebody who just cannot put themselves on the back burner and put your needs first once in a while.
Right. Well, I have a tendency to always put the other person's needs first, and maybe that gives a little bit of, maybe that's a little too doting if you ask me. But, once in a while I would come to a, sort of express that I need some reciprocation, and then it just turns into a complete disaster because maybe that's because that's not the kind of relationship I had set up, or I don't know, maybe that's because she has a problem.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of
letting the other person take the stage,
Yeah, and maybe you have a history of being comfortable and knowing how to navigate relationships where the other person is always the primary source of attention, and so you find people who fit nicely with that. I don't know.
Of course, and we are here with Dr. Sean Smith, the writer of A Tactical Guide to Women. He is here helping me solve my problems. He's here helping me solve my interpersonal relationship issues, which I think a lot of modern men, the millennial men in the modern age could really benefit from, because like I said before, men are getting hosed, and all it takes is just a little bit of introspection. Look inside, see what kind of man you are. Look inside and see what kind of woman you deserve. Because to be perfectly honest, the tips and pointers in this book only work if you are the kind of man that a good woman wants. So we're going to be back. We're going to talk a little bit more with Dr. Sean Smith. We'll be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. I, of course, am the Disgruntled Millennial. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. We've been speaking with Dr. Sean Smith. He has been talking to us a little bit about borderline personality disorder. We've been talking a little bit about some of the issues that many people have that plague our interpersonal relationships. Now, interpersonal relationships, like we've been discussing, are so important. They're so important because they can make you or they can break you. If you are feeling comfortable in your interpersonal relationship, then you can go out and you can face the world and attack any challenge that comes your way. But if you are feeling tired and stressed and accosted and unfairly treated by a partner who basically expects everything and gives nothing, well, then that is the kind of thing that is going to turn a man into a puddle of mud, a puddle of dust. It's going to turn an otherwise productive man, an otherwise happy man, into a sad shell of himself. Now, we're here with Dr. Sean Smith. Again, we are going to be talking a little bit about anxiety and depression and how that can be the bane of many relationships. Let's hear it from the good doctor.
Anxiety and depression, depression can kill relationships, and the way women handle depression tends to be the way the medical establishment or the medical profession defines depression. It's that loss of interest, that sadness, that withdrawal, just that slowing down of behavior. Whereas men tend to get a little more irritable when we get depressed. We tend to get snappy with people. We go out in the world and a lot of times we can function just fine. And if you ask our coworkers, are we depressed? They'd say, no, that guy's on top of the world. But then we go home and we're biting the heads off of our wife and kids. And we're doing this sort of aggressive, short-tempered behavior. And so where men and women get in trouble is that I've met so many men who see this behavior, this depressed behavior in their wives or girlfriends, and they don't understand it for what it is. They think she's just feeling sorry for herself because it doesn't fit with what we understand depression to be. And so they're saying things like, hey, you just got to snap out of it. Hey, let's go for a walk. Let's go to the park. And they do all this well-intentioned stuff that actually starts making the problem worse because it makes her start feeling ashamed of her symptoms and so forth. So just having some tolerance for the different ways we handle emotional problems.
Right. Here's what I think. I think that these are all problems that can be that can be overcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if someone, because I listen, like I've been in relationships where it's just I can't imagine ever having that kind of connection with another human being. But these issues, these like little emotional issues, just kept on getting in the way of there being some sort of long-term enduring happiness. And, like I said before, I tend to also think thematically. And when I see, say, the in-law gets super duper wasted and there's just little bits of mental issues going on here and there, I start to think of, what if we have kids? What if we get married and you're off with the kids? You get mad at me and then you block my phone because you're having a temper tantrum about something. Like how is it supposed to? How can we do this? In a way that that you're just not seeing disaster around every corner.
Yeah, it's one of the real red flags is when a pattern keeps repeating and you're trying to solve a problem and the problem isn't getting solved. And maybe it's because she's unwilling. Maybe it's because she's just a bad fit for you. But life's too short for these destructive problems to just happen over and over again. Right.
So as far as getting people treated from these disorders, is there what kind of light at the end of the tunnel? And let's just say that you're in a relationship where these mental disorders are manifesting themselves. How adamant must you be about finding treatment? Is this like a deal breaker kind of thing?
I think it is. I would tell women that you don't have to date a guy who is a substance abuser and refusing to get treatment. You have every right to say to that person, look, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. Either you choose your substance or you choose me. I'll give you a couple weeks to think about it. And if I don't hear back from you, I'll be really heartbroken and it'll mess me up, but I will know what your decision is and I will leave you to your substance. You have every right to say that. And I think you have every right to say, let me back up. I said I would say that to women. I say the same thing strenuously to men because we are servers and we are protectors and we exist for other people basically a lot of times. we're a little bit resistant to that message, some of us. And so it's really important for men to know that, look, if she's got depression or anxiety or whatever it is, and it's interfering with her life and it's interfering with yours, you do have an obligation to try to get her help. But if she's refusing that help, then you get to make a choice. Do you want this in your life or do you not want this in your life? You don't have to stay with her. And so as far as treatment modalities, for substance abuse and depression and that sort of thing, the internet is full of good advice on how to get treatment for those things. With the personality disorders, it's a little tougher because something like borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or psychopathy, these folks don't tend to want to get treatment because the problem is everybody else in their view. But if a person does engage in treatment, particularly for borderline personality disorder, narcissism and psychopathy, it's almost impossible for those people to seek treatment because life is working out well for them as far as they're concerned. But with borderline personality, there is treatment like dialectical behavior therapy combined with individual therapy. That's the modality of choice, and it can be very effective.
How would you approach a partner if you suspected that they might have one of these disorders, or if they self-admit, self-diagnose as one of these disorders, but they don't really want to get treatment? They sort of give platitudes and promises about getting treatment, but they actually never do. The promises never materialize. How would you go about having that conversation with someone so that because then you could just say, "Oh, I'm done with this," and then in the mind of a person like that, they'll turn around and say, well, this is all you're doing. The end of the relationship, this is all you've caused this, without turning around and looking inside and trying to figure out in their own hearts what they might have done, what role they played in what has happened, and trying to convince a person of that they played a role in this is like, for a person like that, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, and I've met so many guys who find themselves in this situation where they wake up and they realize, oh my God, she's a classic borderline, and the rest of my life is going to suck. And then they spend months and years agonizing over how to handle this because it's a horrible, terrible position to be in. And that's why I wrote the book, is so you can hopefully avoid finding yourself in that position. Let's do the work up front and just dodge the bullets. But eventually, it's easy to say and it's tough to do, but you get back to that ultimatum, which is, look, you got to get treatment or this isn't going to work. But that's a very difficult thing to get to, and it's a very difficult thing to actually enact, especially if there's kids involved and shared property and all of that.
Yeah, I imagine the response would be, all right, I'll get treatment. You have to get treatment too.
Yeah.
And you say, for what? And then they say, well, I don't know, you have problems too.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's the typical response when somebody first starts to realize that maybe they have a personality disorder and they have to change. That's a very tough thing to sit with.
I've got two more questions for you. First, do you do Skype sessions, and how much do you charge for our listeners out there? I'm sure a lot of them are probably sitting here thinking, oh my God, I need to talk to this guy about my own issues, myself included. And so is that a thing, or do you normally keep it, mano a mano, like person to person, in person?
Well, I like to work in person. I can do some Skype sessions if it's more of a coaching thing and it's not more of a clinical thing. And there's some legal distinctions there. But, the man is not real big on me working with people out across state lines. So I'm in Colorado. If somebody lives 10 feet over the Kansas border, I'm not supposed to talk to them. But if it's a coaching type of thing, or just giving information, that sort of thing, it's not impossible. It just needs to be kind of fit within some certain legal parameters.
Of course. So I just wanted to thank you so much today for coming on the show. Where can we get your book? I bought it off of the iTunes, the bookstore. You can get it. I saw the audio book. There's a digital book, but where can we find your book?
It's in all the usual places. It's at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all those places. And if you get lost, you can find me at docsmith.co, and all of my information's up there.
I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. Might have to call you up sometime in private so I can tell you about all my mommy and daddy issues.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll be in touch. Everybody, take heed to these warnings, because you are a target. If you are a high-value man, you are a target for the women want you. Anyway, I do appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Brett.
And if you are a man who is interested in getting into a relationship with a woman, I highly suggest going out and purchasing A Tactical Guide to Women by Dr. Sean Smith. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, subbing in for the great Kevin Jackson. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations again. We are in the final segment of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show for the day. It's a beautiful Friday. I am Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, as you probably know already by now that I broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. I'm going to try to wrap up today's show in a nice little bow for you, because you're going to hear a lot coming from Hollywood, coming from a lot of the Hollywood elites about institutional sexism and misogyny in Hollywood. Of course, they're going to ignore the fact that Hollywood is 99% left-wing, and they're going to completely ignore the fact that that a lot of these hypocrites in Hollywood, these hypocrites who are basically have known about this sexual abuse, have known about this sexual harassment for a very, very long time, but have not come out. Now they're going to come out and tell you all about misogyny. Now they're going to come and tell you all about how to properly treat women. Let's not forget these are the same Hollywood elites who said this about Ann Coulter.
Ann Coulter, if you're here, who's scaring the crows away from our crops? Last year we had Martha Stewart, who sells sheets, and now we have Ann Coulter, who cuts eye holes in them.
Looks like she's having a good time. I haven't seen you laugh this hard since Trayvon Martin got shot.
Ann Coulter is here, which can mean only one thing. Someone must have said her name 3 times. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
First of all, as a feminist, I can't support everything that's being said up here tonight. But as somebody that hates Ann Coulter, I'm delighted.
Ann Coulter is one of the most repugnant, hateful, hatchet-faced bitches alive. But it's not too late to change, Ann. You could kill yourself.
Ann Coulter has written 11 books, 12 if you count Mein Kampf.
Ann Coulter looks so much like a truck stop transvestite whore that I saw Jeff Ross run to an ATM just before the show.
Ann hopes the Republicans can hold on to the House so she can continue to haunt it. She seems stiff and conservative, but Ann gets wild in the sheets. Just ask the Klan.
Ann's against gay marriage. What's your thinking on that? If I can't get a husband, they shouldn't either?
It's 56 days to Halloween, but I see that Ann Coulter's already in her skeleton costume.
Is Pete white? Is he black? Ann Coulter needs to know so she can decide if she hates him.
Why is Ann Coulter here tonight? Answer? Because the Right to Lifers wanted everyone to see what an abortion looks like up close.
I just realized that I am not the only athlete up here tonight. As you all know, earlier this year, Ann Coulter won the Kentucky Derby.
And you know, Ann, after seeing your set tonight, I think we've all witnessed the first bombing that you can't blame on a Muslim.
Okay, now when Donald Trump said that blood was coming out of Megyn Kelly's wherever, This was interpreted by the left as being disrespectful towards all women. He was talking about all women. Now, by the same rationale, aren't these leftists, aren't these Hollywood elites talking about all women when they talk about Ann Coulter? No, they're not talking about all women, because the same rules that apply to leftists don't apply to people who are conservative, people who express conservative values. No, they are Nazis. They are Hitler. Now, one of the things that's so alarming is the complete and utter lack of introspection. Now, we've come out and we've heard from Ashley Judd, a woman who kept a secret of endemic sexual abuse going on in leftist Hollywood. She kept this secret for a very, very long time until it no longer suited her agenda. And then she came out in full force against Harvey Weinstein. But not just that. She blames it on conservatives. She blames it on the patriarchy. You know, she blames it on white supremacy. But she held on to the secret for God knows how many years. And in the next breath, all the rules about sexism and misogyny and fat shaming or skinny shaming or white shaming, racism, baseless accusations of Nazism and being a member of the KKK and supporting the KKK. All those rules, all those little mores that the leftists like to hold conservatives to on a daily basis, they go out the window. They go absolutely out the window. And nobody marched on Washington for Ann Coulter. Nobody marched on Washington for Sarah Palin. Now, you're going to hear a lot from these leftists over the next couple days about this Harvey Weinstein case, and you might be convinced by a lot of it, too. You might say that these leftists have just come around. Maybe they've come around. Maybe they're actually willing to do some introspection to see the corruption and sexism going on in their own camp. No, I predict something else. I predict that this is going to be just more evidence to them of patriarchy. This is going to be more evidence to them of white supremacy. This is going to be more evidence to them of sexual misconduct perpetrated by conservatives, which is the oddest thing. They are not going to look inside and see how what they have done has damaged the culture. They want to project their own evils. They want to project their own secrets onto the patriarchy. Now, these are the people who demand that white people repair slavery. White people from today repair slavery from yesterday. Let's see how far these leftist actresses and actors will go to give back the money that Harvey Weinstein made them. Google it. Google Harvey Weinstein. Google every movie that Harvey Weinstein has been involved in. Now, imagine the millions and millions of dollars in revenue that went to a lot of these actors, actresses, directors, cameramen, visual arts directors, movie composers. Every single person who was involved in the making of a Harvey Weinstein movie might want to go back and return the money that was made from Harvey Weinstein's production company. The victims of Harvey Weinstein are still alive today. They are still kicking. They are still suffering. The victims of slavery, they're not alive today. The people who cracked the whip are not alive today. Harvey Weinstein he's still kicking. His victims are still kicking. Let's see how far the left is willing to go to support their very own philosophy, to support their very own liberal logic. Because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you can claim that Donald Trump was talking about all women, then these leftists who want to criticize Ann Coulter for some very, very normal, down-to-earth beliefs and call her a Nazi and call her a KKK and call her a Confederate and then make fun of her looks and make fun of her body and all this stuff, like the body shaming community. If you are really going to go out there and support all these different causes, then you are going to have to take a look inward if you want anybody to take you seriously. We can't take you seriously, and we want to be able to take you seriously. Meryl Streep and Ashley Judd, we want to be able to take it seriously when you say that these are abhorrent behaviors on behalf of the feminists out there, of the women out there. Now you take to Washington, you manage to get off of your lazy butts and drive your buses by the truckload, by the busload. You drive your people out to Washington and you march for women's lives for this sort of nebulous white supremacy, this nebulous patriarchy that no one can really pinpoint, that no one can really understand. It's just this nebulous villain that makes all cisgendered straight white men look terrible. But yet when you have a villain on your side who fits every single criteria to mobilize you, you can't even look inwards. You can't even look inwards and say, you know what? We did this. We did this. We supported this community. I'm Ashley Judd. I kept those secrets. I was wrong because that was evil. Imagine if I had spoken up. If I was Ashley Judd, I would say I've been famous for a very, very long time. And I have had influence for a very, very long time, and I never mentioned it. And who knows how many women I put at risk? Who knows how many women were terrorized by this man? Who knows how many waitresses couldn't get out of that waitressing job because they wouldn't take their pants off and for Harvey Weinstein. They wouldn't watch Harvey Weinstein masturbate and take a shower. How many of them lost out on career opportunities? Isn't that what the feminists should care about? I'm Ashley Judd, and I've had the nerve to come out and lecture you about sexism. I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry. No, this is going to be just another opportunity for the left to double down on their intersectional feminist crap. Stay away from these women, and please try not to imbibe too much of this over the weekend, because believe me, it is going to, if you pay attention to news and politics, it is going to get worse. We are probably going to hear a lot more from these folks like Ashley Judd telling us how awful and terrible conservatives are. Now, every single leftist commentator that I've seen talk about this so far has neglected to mention that he is a big Hillary Clinton donor. They forget to mention that he's a leftist. They forget to mention that he is a lifelong Democrat. They forget to mention that rumors have been really going around for quite some time. No, they just say, this is terrible. This is awful. This just happened in a vacuum. I'm starting to notice a theme here. Tweet me at Shaq General. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. We'll see you next week.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.